Aloha, dear friends. Welcome to the Sunday morning devotional program sponsored by the Spiritual Assemblies of the Baha'is of South DeKalb County and Sandy Springs, Georgia. It's wonderful to have you all with us today. Across the globe, the teachings of the Baha'i faith, brought to us more than 150 years ago by His Holiness Baha'u'llah, its founder, whose name in Arabic means the glory of God, have inspired and continue to inspire individuals and communities as they strive to improve their own lives and contribute to the advancement of civilization. Baha'i beliefs address such essential themes as the oneness of God and religion, the oneness of humanity and freedom from all forms of prejudice, the inherent nobility of the human being, the progressive revelation of religious truth, a gradual unfolding of God's purpose with the appearance of each divine teacher, the development of spiritual qualities which allow us to reflect the image in which God made us, the integration of worship and service, with work performed in the spirit of service being accounted as worship in the eyes of God, the fundamental equality of the sexes, more widely evidenced in a setting of equal opportunity, the harmony between religion and science as an established fact, the centrality of justice in all human endeavor, the importance of education, particularly for children, and the dynamics of the relationships that bind together individuals, communities, and institutions as humanity advances towards its collective maturity. Again, welcome. We're pleased to have you all join us. We'll begin with opening devotions. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking and silence your electronic devices if you are speaking. Thank you. Deng Ting.
O Lord, unto thee I repair for refuge, and toward all the signs I set my heart. O Lord, whether traveling or at home, and in my occupation or in my work, I place my whole trust in thee. Grant me then that sufficing help, so as to make me independent of all things, although who are unsurpassed in the mercy. Bestow upon me my portion, O Lord, as thou pleasest, and cause me to be satisfied with whatsoever thou hast ordained for me. Thine is the absolute authority to command. Above.
Elizabeth.
Praise be unto thee, O Lord. Forgive us our sins. Have mercy upon us, and enable us to return unto thee. Suffer us not to rely on aught else beside thee. And vouchsafe unto us, through thy bounty, that which thou lovest and desirest, and well beseemeth thee. Exalt the station of them that have truly believed, and forgive them with thy gracious forgiveness. Verily, thou art the help in peril, the self-subsisting. Above.
Yasmin.
Nothing on the screen.
Oh, you can't see it yet.
No.
Are you able to see it, Barbara Taylor?
No, the screen is blank. How is that?
Oh, well, it's not for me. That's why I'm asking if someone else can see it. I don't know.
I can see it. I can see it.
I can see it as well.
Okay. Could you read that one for us, Barbara?
Okay, sure. O my Lord, make thy beauty to be my food and thy presence my drink. and thy pleasure my hope, and praise of thee my action, and remembrance of thee my companion, and the power of thy sovereignty my succorer, and thy habitation my home, and my dwelling place, the seat thou hast sanctified in the limitations imposed upon them who are shut out as by a veil from thee. Thou art verily the mighty, the glorious, the most powerful. Baha'u'llah. Somebody needs to mute.
Ernest?
I have wakened in thy shelter, O my God, and it becomes him that seeks that shelter to abide within the sanctuary of thy protection and to the stronghold of thy defense. Illuminate my inner being, O my Lord, with the splendors of the day springs of thy revelation, even as thou didst illuminate my outer being with the morning lights of thy favor. Baha'u'llah.
I consider writing now, Stephen.
All right. Do you want to read this one for us?
Yeah. O my Lord, this is a lamp lighted by the fire of thy love, and ablaze with a flame which is ignited in the tree of thy mercy. O my Lord, increase his enkindlement, heat and flame, with the fire which is enkindled in the Sinai of thy manifestation. Verily thou art the conformer, the assister, the powerful, the generous, the loving, Abdul Baha.
O Lord, enable the peoples of the earth to gain admittance into the paradise of thy faith, so that no created being may remain beyond the bounds of thy good pleasure. From time immemorial, thou hast been potent to do what pleaseth thee, and transcendent above whatsoever thou desirest. Matthew, are you there?
Yeah, I can't see the writing though. It's too small.
Okay. Gwen, are you able to read that one? It's kind of small.
Well, we'll give it a there we
How
go.
about that?
Go ahead, Matthew.
There.
Okay, I can see now.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. For if God, glorified be his name, should today speak a word that all people have spoken heretofore and shall speak hereafter, that word would still be new, were ye to reflect upon it. Consider the term divine unity, which the manifestations of God have uttered in every dispensation, a goodly term which all the diverse peoples and kindreds of the world have spoken. Nevertheless, in each dispensation it hath been made new, and hath in no wise been divested of its novel character. Into every word that God doth speak, a new spirit is breathed, and the breezes of life are wafted therefrom upon all things, both outwardly and inwardly. Baha'u'llah.
Could we make that a little larger again, Barbara? And then Gwen, if you would do us the pleasure of reading it.
Certainly. Oh, yes. Yes. That's justice. Justice is not limited. It is a universal quality. Its operation must be carried out in all classes, from the highest to the lowest. Justice must be sacred, and the rights of all people must be considered. Desire for others only that which you desire for yourself. Then shall we rejoice in the sun of justice, which shines from the horizon of God. Abdul Baha.
Okay. Perhaps we could enlarge that one as well. And then if I could ask Barbara Taylor to read for us again.
Yes, I'll try. The whole human race is submerged in the sea of the mercy of the Lord. And we are all the sheep of the one divine shepherd. Whatever shortcomings exist among us must be remedied. For example, those who are ignorant must be educated so that they may become wise. The sick must be treated until they recover. Those who are immature must be trained in order to reach maturity. Those asleep must be awakened. All this must be accomplished through love, and not through hatred and hostility. Abdul Baha. Oh.
Thank you to all today's readers. Next, we're going to listen to a healing prayer. If any of you wish to remember a loved one through this prayer for healing, please feel free to call out their name at this time.
Daniel Byers,
Josie Reynolds,
Trainer,
Trish Hendon,
Elon Bowers,
Thy name is my healing, oh my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing, and my succor in both this world and the worlds to come. Thou verily art the all bountiful, the all knowing, the all wise. all knowing, the all wise, the all knowing, the all wise.
And now we'll have a musical offering.
Help me to triumph by the host of thy glories, thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmations. Help me to triumph by the host of thy glories, thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmations. Help me to triumph by the host of thy glories, thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmations. Help me to triumph by the host of thy glories, thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmations, which alone can change a gnat into an eagle, a drop of water into rivers and seas, an atom into lights and suns. Oh, my Lord, help me to triumph by the host of thy glorious, thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmation. Help me to triumph by the host of thy glorious, thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmation. Help me to triumph by the host of thy glorious, thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmation. Help me to triumph by the host of thy glorious, thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmation, which alone can change a gnat into an eagle, a drop of water into rivers and seas, an atom into lights and suns, which alone can change a gnat into an eagle, a drop of water into rivers and seas, an atom into lights and suns. Oh, my Lord, help me to triumph by the host of thy glorious, thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmation. Help me to triumph by the host of thy glorious, thy glorious kingdom, and thy glorious, thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmation. Help me to triumph by the host of thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmation.
Wow, that was wonderful. So, friends, each week we're blessed to have a guest presenter share with us their insights on a particular topic. This week, we're honored to have with us Talisha Harrison. Talisha is a third-generation Baha'i, and as such strives to be of service to humanity and a champion of social justice. She earned her master's in social work from the University of Michigan and currently resides in Decatur, Georgia. Friends, please welcome Talisha Harrison.
Hello, friends.
Hello,
Thank you. I have to say I'm a little nervous today. Not necessarily because I'm speaking, but really what I would like to speak about. And it's funny, this is the second time this month that I've had an opportunity to speak. Really what's on my heart in terms of, being a Baha'i and within the community. As even mentioned, I am a third generation Baha'i. My grandparents were taught the faith by Amos Gibson, who was on the Universal House of Justice for some time. So I'm very proud of that. I grew up in the faith. I am a staunch believer in Baha'u'llah. I can't count the many times that Baha'u'llah has saved my life. The impact that the faith has had on my family, I can see clearly. However, it can be a little difficult as a African American and one who comes from a lower social class, if you will, can be very difficult to be a part of this community that I love so very much. And while I was preparing for the talk that I gave earlier this month that I'm going to speak more about later in the presentation, something interesting came to me. And that is, I'm going to ask this question. What happens when you pray for patience? Anybody know what happens? Nothing, right? Because you're getting the opportunity to practice that virtue. You're getting the opportunity to practice patience, right? And therefore you will have more patience, right? So what happens when you pray for the oneness of mankind? You get opportunities to practice. And I had never really thought of it that way, right? I mean, that's one of the main goals of the Baha'i faith is the unification of the human race. I would say maybe 80% of our writings, the prayers that we, say on a regular basis are about unity of mankind. So we are constantly getting opportunities to practice this most important principle. And I guess I can say that I don't know if I'm doing so well with that. I've been a member of the Central DeKalb Local Spiritual Assembly for quite a few years. And there was a point in time when I wasn't participating in the meetings. I couldn't feast, I wasn't praying, and none of these things because I didn't feel like I had a place in the discussions, in the consultations. It was very difficult. And at some points, I would find myself feeling like a little kid on the playground. You're playing in the sand, and people aren't cooperating, so you take your pail and you throw it down and you leave. Right? Well, and for a while, that was my way of dealing with it. I can't say that was the best way of dealing with it, but I can say that, especially for the last couple of years, I think we all have been dealing with quite a bit in terms of COVID and, with racism. I mean, you name it. There's been so many issues that have been brought to the forefront. Like we can see the systems, being destroyed in front of our eyes. Of course, we understand that as Baha'is that, there's another system that is being built in its place, but it can be very difficult not to get caught up in what's happening, right? And so for me, one of the things that has always been a kind of a safe haven for me is to serve social justice, right? As a matter of fact, it wasn't until I was in grad school that I began to understand that this faith is about social justice. Now, isn't that strange? I learned that in graduate school. I've been a Baha'i my entire life. I didn't understand that the faith was about social justice until I was in my last semester of grad school in social work, and I couldn't find any solutions to the problems that were being presented at that time, except in the writings. It was the only place where I could find the solutions to the social problems that we had, that we're facing in this day. So it became very important to me, right? And it became my way of dealing with things. And so when COVID and all this stuff kind of hit, and the American society was barraged with all of these different conflicts, I wanted to serve. I wanted to go out in the community and serve in what I felt was a meaningful way. And I wasn't quite finding that within the Baha'i community. And I think part of the reason for that is in most of my communities, the dominant culture has been European and West. And that place, that environment, that space that's created for me has never really elicited a spiritual response, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that resonates with people, but it has never really, there seems to be a spirit missing. I'll say that, right? And what I also want to bring up is, it's no secret in the faith that, especially in the American continent, that racism is the most challenging issue. This is something that we have to deal with, right? And I mentioned earlier being like this little kid feeling like I'm throwing my pail in the sand and I'm gonna, walk off, right? And when I do that, I tend to think of this quote from Abdul Baha that was in the Star of the West. And he said that the American people were looking to the Baha'is to solve the issue of racism. And if we didn't do it, there was going to be nowhere for anyone to turn. Well, in that case, I can't just throw down my pail, right? I can't just throw up my pail and leave, right? Because that means we all have nowhere to go. I don't have anywhere to go. My daughter don't have anywhere to go, right? So somehow we have to be able to deal with these issues in a way that is going to be more effective, I believe, than what we have seen thus far. And so at this point, I want to share my screen. I want to look at a couple quotes. And you have to forgive me, I'm not really good at this. The whole talking and being on, having to name at the same time. Everybody see this? You get some head nods. Yes, okay, thank you. So this first quote kind of deals with what I was talking about in terms of the most challenging issue, right? I'm gonna step back a bit. So I also am a member of a Baha'i group called the Open Circle Network. And this organization is one that deals with those issues in the faith that are kind of pushed to the background, like addictions and abuse and same-sex attraction. We deal specifically with these issues within the Baha'i community. And when I first became involved in this community, I asked the question, what was the percentage of people in the faith dealing with these issues? Like, was it any different than what the American, the general American society was dealing with? And, the other members laughed and said it's exactly the same. And so when it comes to our Baha'i communities in terms of racism and everything else that's going on, what's happening in our communities is exactly the same as what's happening in the rest of the world, right? And so this quote is from Show Me Effendi, and he says, "These recurrent crises, which with ominous frequency and resistless force are afflicting an ever-increasing portion of the human race, must of necessity continue, however impermanently, to exercise in a certain measure the baneful influence upon a world community which has spread its ramifications to the uttermost ends of the earth. How can the beginnings of a world upheaval, unleashing forces that are so gravely deranging the social, the religious, the political, and the and the economic equilibrium of organized society, throwing into chaos and confusion political systems, racial doctrines, social conceptions, cultural standards, religious associations, and trade relationships? How can such agitations on a scale so fast, so unprecedented, fail to produce any repercussions on the institutions of the faith of such tender age, whose teachings have a direct and vital bearing on each of these spheres of human life and conduct?" Now, of course, that's Shoghi Effendi, and he said it in a lot of words. But you get the gist, right? Essentially, you can't walk through mud and not get dirty. You can't live in this society and not be afflicted with the ills that are present in this society. And that gave me a little bit of, I wouldn't say hope, but gave me a little more understanding about the situation that we're dealing with within our Baha'i communities at this time. Now, one of the things that I think is also very interesting to note, though, is that within the Baha'i faith, the country of America has a very specific purpose, right? A very specific spiritual destiny. We are to lead the world spiritually. And that, to me, seems really strange, looking at what's happening around us right now. It's funny, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who's not a Baha'i, but I'm learning to be able to talk about these things in a way that I'm hoping is not damaging to the faith, but also would allow for people to understand what they're getting into when they join the faith, if that makes any sense. And I was saying to her that, one of the things that the writings also talk about is that when Baha'u'llah came and when manifestations of God come, they come to the most darkest place on the planet, right? Because that's where the light is going to shine the brightest. And so when you look at it from that perspective, right, America is a pretty dark place, I would say, right about now. So it would stand to reason that once we are able to really manifest and generate that level of spiritual energy in this country, that we will be able to lead the world spiritually. And I believe this quote is from Abdul Baha, and he says, "The continent of America," he so significantly wrote, "is in the eyes of the one true God, the land wherein the splendors of his life shall be revealed, where the mysteries of his faith shall be unveiled, where the righteous will abide and the free assemble." We are promised this. And I when I look at this quote, I think about another quote from Abdul Baha where he talks when he laid the cornerstone, the rock at the temple in Wilmette, right? Because he has this rock, and I think it was on a wheelbarrow or whatever, and he placed it in the ground and he said, "It is built." Well, the building didn't appear, right? But it was promised at that point that the building would be built, and it was. But it took a lot of struggle. It took a lot of strife and pain and sacrifice and all those things for that building to be built. And I believe the same is true with, where we have to go as American Baha'is in terms, to make this statement true. It's going to take that, level of sacrifice and struggle and all those things. But we are promised in the writings that this is the case. And so that makes me hopeful to some extent. And this quote, it's funny. I've read a lot about the Most Great Peace. I've heard a lot about it, throughout my life. But this quote really struck me for one reason. It says, the banner of the Most Great Peace has been unfurled and the great community is appearing. What strikes me in this is the great community. Where is this great community? That's what I've been looking for, right? Especially since COVID and all these other things hit. I've been looking for that great community, the one that wants to, to serve and, get our hands dirty and be involved in the community and bring, the faith, forward in an active, proactive way, right? I haven't really, I've had glimpses of it throughout my, Baha'i life, but I haven't really seen this community until a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned I was asked to speak. It was at the beginning of the month. I had the opportunity to go to Alabama, and they were having an event where they were honoring an elder of the community, as well as telling people about the faith, as well as, there's a community garden there as well. And when I tell you, when I went there, I felt, I can't even explain, I'm still trying to process this experience that I had in Alabama. But that was, to me, a clear example of this great community that is forming, that is emerging. And when I tell you this great community was 98% African American, this great community was 5% Baha'i. This great community was something different than what is present in our Baha'i communities during this time. And one of the things that I think was so amazing about this event, one of the things that we did when we first gathered, when the event first started, they asked us they had a table with cups of water on it. And they asked us to take a cup of water and to circumambulate the garden. And while we were doing that, to recall the names of our ancestors. And when I tell you that experience brought the spiritual energy to that space, it increased it 100-fold, right? Why wouldn't it? And so I was thinking, why don't we do, like, why is this missing in the faith? Is it that we don't believe in ancestors, or, where is this connection in the faith? Because, whatever I find, I have to look in the faith for its validity. Okay. And so I looked up ancestors. I didn't get much. I looked up angels. I'm like, no, that's not really that's not really what I'm talking about or what I was feeling. And then I came to, anybody guess? Concourse on high. The concourse on high. Why does that not include our ancestors? Was a question I began to ask myself. And I started looking at definitions of what the concourse on high was. And I came, and there's one kind of running definition. I'm sorry I didn't put it up here, but there's one kind of definition that I saw over and over again. And it said manifestations of God, prophets, and it gave two other categories, something in his favorite ones, right? So essentially anybody, right, pass on who is a spiritually developed person can be included, as far as I understand it, in the concourse of high. And what does it say here? It says, know thou with certainty that thy Lord will come to thine aid with the company of the concourse on high and hosts of the Baha'i kingdom. By the righteousness of God, whoso openeth his lips in this day and maketh mention of the name of his Lord, the hosts of divine inspiration shall descend upon him from the heaven of my name, the all-knowing, the all-wise. On him shall also descend the concourse on high, each bearing aloft a chalice of pure light. Thus hath it been foreordained in the realm of God's revelation by the behest of him who is the all-glorious, the most powerful. This spiritual energy, the concourse on high is there ready to assist us. But I don't think I've ever, I know of a certainty that I've never been in a, Baha'i space where we have actually called on the concourse on high to be with us, to acknowledge their presence. We don't do that. I don't know why we don't do it. We need to begin to do this, as was done in this event that I had the pleasure of being a part of a couple of weeks ago. Also, and I still, I marvel at this, right? That we are the spiritual descendants of the Dawnbreakers, right? So not only do we have our bloodline ancestors, we also have our spiritual line ancestors to accompany us and assist us in this, great task that we have of helping to bring about the unification of mankind. But again, I don't hear us talk about this. I don't hear us, and I think about the first believers, the letters of the living, how they found the Bible. It was through dreams, through prayer. It wasn't from reading letters or studying. It was from none of those things, right? And as a matter of fact, when Mullah Hussein, when he first met the Bible, it was that list of criteria that he had that almost kept him from recognizing who the Bible was. I guess what I'm trying to get to, and what is so important to me in terms of the faith, is being in tune and connected to that spiritual energy, that spirit, in the faith that talks about the connection between the spiritual and the physical world, right? We have the means to be far more connected to the spiritual world than our communities, as far as I understand it, have taught us, right? And to me, it seems to be more of an intellectual exercise most of the time when we read the writings, when we go over the letters. And the action seems to be missing, right? When you get, for me, and this is what has happened to me since, going to this event and being exposed to all this energy, which I've been longing for so long, it spurs you into action. I've actually been teaching the faith more than I can't even remember, right? I've been praying more, not because I willed it to be, so to speak, but because I have access to what I've been longing for so long, in terms of connecting, my spiritual self and my physical self, connecting those together, having that space available, to remind us of that is really important. Because I think, when you look at, the Institute process, and especially like in the junior youth program, they talk about those spiritual forces and the other forces that are, the positive and negative forces that we're dealing with in this day, and they are great, right? I mention that because I may have some understanding of this on my own, but the issues and things that are coming up in this day require more than my effort, right? I cannot do it by myself. There has to be a community of people that I can serve with, right? And that's what I've been looking for. And like I said, I'm coming to a point where I think I'm actually finding it and how to help develop that, not just in this community in Alabama, but in all of our communities. And I mentioned that this gathering was 98% African American. This the event that I went to in Alabama. And I have been, I live in the Atlanta area. I have been in gatherings that were, predominantly African American, but it wasn't like this. And again, one of the things I mentioned was because I think of the calling of the ancestors, the drums that we have, the African dance, that community that was created that really had nothing to do with the faith. As a matter of fact, they had something to teach us about how to create community, right? We may have the solutions to the social problems, but because of our placement, if you will, in society, we lack the community piece. We just do, and it's something that, to acknowledge so that we can grow and develop in that area. But Abdu'l-Baha had this to say about Black people. He said, "Thou art like the pupil of the eye, which is dark in color, yet it is the fount of light and the revealer of the contingent world." Now, I'm sure we've, at this time, we've all heard a lot about the pupil of the eye concept in the faith. The thing that stuck out to me, most notably in this quote, which is what I highlighted in blue, the contingent world. And I started to think about what the contingent world was. What does that mean? Right? And so you've heard me speak before, you've heard this analogy because I use it a lot. And it's the concept of you have four different people standing on four sides of a really large, huge elephant. And so one is in the front, one is in the back, and there's two on the sides, right? And you can only see, these four people can only see their side of the elephant, okay? And each one of them is asked to describe the elephant. And the one in the front describes, two floppy ears, two beady eyes, maybe a trunk, right? The mouth, the face of the elephant. The one in the back describes, two parallel legs, a little short tail, a big, kind of behind, right? And the two on the sides, kind of describe something similar, right? One ear, two parallel legs, you get the idea. But here's the question: who is right in describing the elephant? And the answer is they're all wrong by themselves. But if you put all of their descriptions together, then you have a whole elephant, right? Well, I'm coming from my understanding, my perspective is, and my understanding is that the viewpoint, the description of today's ills and all that we're dealing with is missing from the African American perspective. We're missing that within the faith, right? And that's what I think it means when it talks about being the revealer of the contingent world. What is it contingent upon? It's contingent upon our understandings, right? What we understand is based on what we believe, right? I tend to think about, when the police shootings became, really prevalent in the media, and we're watching all these videos. They would be very disconcerting, very painful, very, very hard to watch. But something that was even more difficult was to read the comments. And I couldn't understand how people could be seeing the same thing that I'm seeing and understanding it so differently. How does that happen? Because what we see is based on what we believe, right? And so if the dominant understanding, the dominant belief system we have in the faith is still that European upper middle class understanding, we're missing a huge piece of the pie, right? And again, I'm a third generation Baha'i. I've been here a long time. And in most communities, I'm usually, in the minority. It can be very difficult. If it's white, black, whatever the differences are, it can be very difficult to get your point across when you are in the minority, right? And when you don't have that prevailing viewpoint. Now, of course, it's supposed to be different within the faith with consultation, and we have all of the, all of the rules in place to be able to make that happen. But sadly, it's not happening right now. But again, go back to the quote from Soya Fendi. Any of the issues that we're dealing with as a country, we are dealing with as a Baha'i community. And in that way, my experience in the faith has been exactly the same as it has been being the only Black kid in my class at school, right? There's something wrong with that picture. And I think that's one of the reasons why all of the letters that we're getting these days are talking about, or a majority of them, from both the Universal House of Justice and the National Spiritual Assembly, are telling us that we need to bring in large numbers of Black people. Well, why? Well, I think, I've given you a couple of reasons. The connection to the ancestors. We need that in our Baha'i communities. I think I meant to look this up. I didn't get a chance, but it's been my experience that recently African Americans are getting more in tune with this idea of ancestry. It used to be, years ago, at some points kind of taboo, or, you're kind of dealing with the devil and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't seem to be the case right now. And I don't think it's on an accident. I think it's on purpose. I think that's where we're moving to as a society. And as African Americans grow in their own understanding and development of spirituality, we need them or us to bring that into the faith so that it's present there as well. Not only do we need to bring that energy, we also need to be able to bring our perceptions, our understandings of the world into this space so that we can apply adequate solutions. If we don't do that, I don't see that happening, right? This is one of my favorite quotes. I'm not even sure if it really fits right here, but I'm saying it anyway. It's one of my favorites. And it speaks to, for me, again, the solutions to all of the problems that we have are in the writings, right? And so I'm just going to read it and talk about it just a little bit. Oh, ye lovers of this wronged one, cleanse ye your eyes so that you behold no man as different from yourselves. See ye no strangers, rather see all men as friends. For love and unity come hard when you fix your gaze on otherness. And in this new and wondrous age, the holy writings say that we must be at one with every people, that we must see neither harshness nor injustice, neither malevolence nor hostility nor hate, but rather turn our eyes toward the heaven of ancient glory. For each of the creatures is a sign of God, and it was by the grace of the Lord and his power that each did step into the world. Therefore, they are not strangers, but in the family, not aliens, but friends, and to be treated as such. I think I put that in for a couple of reasons. Yes, we need large numbers of African Americans to come into the faith, but everybody is required, right? This is the unification of mankind. And you notice I didn't put in here that quote, the one that is really quite commonly used about what white people need to do and what African Americans need to do, right? White people need to get rid of their inherent sense of superiority. Black people need to get rid of our sense of suspicion. I didn't put that in here because I don't think we're there yet. We don't have enough people, African Americans in the faith for that to be applicable at this point. Right now, I feel like we're at the place where we need to just open the doors and allow for droves of African Americans to come into the faith. And then next steps become possible, right? And to understand that love and unity are based upon what we find common with each other. That's why I find funny with the whole phrase of unity and diversity. How can you place the same value on difference? That's not how we connect. We connect through what's common with each other. Does that make sense? So that when we have large numbers of African Americans come into the faith, that's going to be the next step, right? For us to be able to connect through what we find common between all of us, right? And to move from there. Now, I think, I don't know a lot of you, but from what I was gleaning from the conversations that were being had prior to the session starting, I don't think many people are new to the faith that are on this call. And so I'm putting in this next quote only because it's important for me to understand that what we are being asked to do, what we are being asked to accomplish is very, very difficult, but also promised to succeed. And I was going to say, if we step up to the plate, but even if we don't, right? What do the writings say? The rocks will teach if we don't do it, right? So this is promised to happen. The most great peace and the unification of the human race, all of this is promised to happen. The question is, where do we see ourselves in this process? And let me read this quote. It says, "Many will be the setbacks, the shocks, and the disturbances which the commotions of a convulsive age must produce. Yet no force, however violent and worldwide in its range and catastrophic in its immediate consequences, can either halt these processes or deflect their appointed course. How great then the privilege and how staggering the responsibility of those who are destined to guard over them and to bring them infringibly to full fruition. Nothing short of continuous consecration to his will and purpose could enable them to fulfill their high destiny." I really love that quote. Because it gives for me a clear understanding of the process. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult, but it is destined to succeed. So again, where do you want to see yourself? All right. And then this last quote, I don't know, I just love thinking about the most great peace as we deal with all the issues that we're dealing with today. And it says, this is a quote from Abdul Baha'i. It says, "War shall cease between nations, and by the will of God, the most great peace shall come. And the world will be seen as a new world, and all men will live as brothers." I believe that wholeheartedly. I believe in this faith. I believe in the Baha'i community, even though it's caused me such consternation in the last couple of years. But I'm going to try my best to hang in there, and I hope that you all do too. And I hope, my biggest hope or greatest hope is that at this time is that we open our doors to large numbers of African Americans into this faith so that we can do what it is we need to do at this time to bring about the most great peace. And that's the end of my talk.
Thank you. Thank you, Talisha. So if you could stop your screen share, we'll throw open the floor to questions and discussion. So is anyone who would like to open our discussion today?
Okay. I think I would like to say something. Thank you very much, Talisha. That was a wonderful talk. I like what you said, that what happens when we pray, and you might be saying that you're not getting no results, but you're getting time to practice and get better in what you're praying for. And that was nice. And I like where you said the only place to find the solution for everything is in the writings. And You say that Abdul Baha looking to the Baha'is to solve the problems in the world, and that's true. And where you said, where God sent messengers are the brightest place in the world. If you look at that, I was looking at that too, where all the messengers came in the east. So that's where all the messengers came. And Abdul Baha placed his throne and say, it's already built. Yeah, so we have to do the rest. He already did his part. We had to do the rest. Yes. And the latter part where you said that a great community has appeared. And I like what you said about putting the water for the ancestors, that the spirits on high are ready to assist us. Not only the spirit on high, but our bloodline too. Our bloodline ancestors and our spiritual ancestors. Going to a so I like the metaphor, the example where what you said about the elephant. The Africans are missing, and they cannot really get the plan across. We need to open the doors for the African American to come into the faith. Yes, I really like what you said. And thank you so much for all these. This was so nice. I learned a lot. Thank you very much.
All right. Does anyone else want to share any thoughts or questions?
I want to say thank you, Talisha. She bailed me out. I was up against the wall. She was our last minute speaker, but I'm so glad you accepted to do it. Your talk was so soothing for me this morning. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you. You hit some points there that needed to be hit. So thank you. And I hope you come back again. And Gwen, you see my picture?
Barbara, Ernest and I were just saying how beautiful you are, and we need to see your radiant face more often. Thank you for showing up full-faced. And as long as I'm talking for a second, Talisha, you hit many, many points that needed to be said on many levels. And actually, there's a couple things that if it'd be permissible for me to have your email address so I could talk with you a little more. But I've been in several groups where we do bring in our ancestors, and you're right, it makes a difference. One such case, we were at a family reunion and we did that, and it was we were outside, it was very quiet. The breeze wasn't even hardly moving. And we started mentioning all these, I get choked up to even think about it. We started thinking about all of our ancestors and putting their names out there. And as soon as we got finished, and there were, good heavens, probably 35, 40 people that were putting out ancestors' names. And after we did that, the chimes started ringing. Don't tell me they're not with us.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. And you're right, it's a source that we need to tap into. And and the praying is good, but we also need our ancestors, and we also need to bring in, I'm going to say this boldly, bring in more African Americans, because quite honestly, if we don't, it's very boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you could leave your email, I'd appreciate it greatly. Thank you.
That's another reason we started ending these sessions with prayer for the departure, to remember all of the souls that have gone on and have paved the way for us, and to, to remember them. So, yeah.
Barbara, can I make a suggestion to do that in the beginning as opposed to in the end? I think that will be helpful as well.
What I was thinking when you were talking about racism and the need for more of us to be in the faith. God uses anyone who he chooses to do these things. And I think that what was going on since really COVID began, of people coming together, young people out in the streets, demanding justice for Blacks, demanding justice for all of Americans. That was nothing but the hand of God. And I think because we have been praying, though we are few, he sends his whole concourse on high to help us. So behind us, even if we look like we're only one person, he's doing his mighty work and bringing in all that must be brought in to make this happen. And it's happening, whether or not we see it.
All right. I have a question for you, if it's okay. So I live in North Fulton, and it's mostly white and Persian up here. And I really appreciate your talk, first of all, because the points that you made are so on path that it's amazing. But in addition to what you said, are there other things that we can do to make some of the Black Americans more comfortable in the communities or whatever? Because I noticed that we've had Baha'i, there are people who became Baha'is who are people of color, but then after a certain amount of time, they would leave the faith, not because they disliked the faith, but they wanted to get back to the feeling of their churches or whatever else for social reasons and spiritual reasons too. What can we do in communities where we have so few people of color to start with? What can we do? Because it's very frustrating. And I know there's stuff we can do. We just don't know what. So do you have any suggestions in addition to what you've already talked about?
My suggestion to you will be to go out of your way to get into spaces that are predominantly African American. And the reason why I say that is because what happens, that's why I brought up the example of being the only Black kid in your class. You're limited. And it can be very difficult. And of course, yes, we have the spiritual backing of the concourse on high. But especially if you're a new Baha'i, it can be pretty daunting to come into our spaces. And I thankfully I've grown up here, so this is where I feel comfortable. I can see the disparities, if you will, in terms of diversity. I see them very clearly, but at the same time, this is where I grew up. I grew up saying the prayers, you know what I mean? So for me, it's a pretty, even with all of the stress that it's caused me, recently, it's still a pretty safe space. But if you're somebody that's new and you're used to some semblance of community, because I think the whole U.S. society is afflicted by a community deficit. I'll say that. But, African Americans, I think, still have some level of that. If you're used to that and you come into the faith, it feels you'll be starving pretty soon, right? So what I would say, again, is for white people, go to those spaces wherever you can that are predominantly African American. It's going to give you a whole different viewpoint. You can't, it doesn't happen the other way, right? Because like you said, you don't even know what the issues are. What are you going to fix? You don't even know what they are. So, go out of your way to get into some of these spaces, and then maybe it becomes clearer. I don't know if anybody else has suggestions. That's just what I would suggest.
I would like to share 2 points. First, thank you all very much for your sharing. I think through sharing your experiences or your journey, I see a very dedicated Baha'i who is really struggling, trying so hard, trying to find the way, like how can we make this world a better place, and how can we achieve the oneness. So one point I really like is that there was a certain period of time, my husband know it, I think last year I had a tough time because we were stuck here. We actually live in China, but we stuck here in Atlanta for over 1 year and a half, more than 1 year and a half. Like, not because had a tough time, not because we were stuck here. Right now, it doesn't bother me anymore. Mainly because I saw all the racial issues, fight, and that really hurts me, because I really see all people, regardless what their skin color or whatever political party they are, I really see them as human beings. You know, I really feel hurt, like so many people killed, so many people died in the COVID-19. But what helped me is the quote you shared is, because we always have a vision, like a vision, it's beautiful vision. The Baha'i has a beautiful new world vision. We all relate to each other, brothers and sisters. We all love each other and live in harmony. But the reality is not like that. And sometimes we got kind of heartbroken. We got discouraged. We even lose our hope. We're very, very frustrated. So I think what really helped me is vision is not a reality. But just because it's not a reality yet, we should not lose our hope or strength or our action. So I see from passion to mission to action to vision. So the quote I like is said, we should shift to see the turn to the heaven of the Asian glory and see men of no differences, and don't see them as strangers, but see them as friends, and see them with love and a new and wondrous age. So I really like that. That's the point. I think that's the part I like being a Baha'i. It really keeps me staying, being positive, hopeful, love and kindness, no matter how you are disappointed by what's happening in the society, in reality right now. So I think that's the part I really like being a Baha'i. Another point I want to share is I am a minority myself. I came to America in 2001. A lot of times and situations, I am the only one. Like when I was studying at the University of Virginia, a lot of my education courses, I am the only Chinese. So I definitely can relate to you, like how daunting it can be because you are the only one. But I also want to share something miracle or strange I have is, I don't know what it is. I can relate extremely well to Baha'is. So like even if it's this community, I honestly, when I first joined this community, I did not know a person. Okay, Barbara, I know Barbara. I met her maybe 2 or 3 times. I don't know her that well either. But ever since I even before I became a Baha'i, I think maybe that's the reason I became a Baha'i, is because I feel so comfortable and accepted and loved and connected with them. Even though I wasn't Baha'i, I started to interact with Baha'i in 2000, ever since I moved to America. But I became a Baha'i in 2017. Okay, so it's a long story, but I really felt very, very comfortable with them, because the point you made is that we can relate to each other. It's not because the differences, but something common. So maybe that's the reason I can relate to them, because we have this common faith. I know if they're Baha'i, we have the common vision, common belief. I know they will treat me with respect and love and kindness, and which turn out to be true every time. So maybe once we hold that belief in our heart, so regardless, even though you're the only African-American Baha'i in the whole community, we still have there something in common. And I know I can relate to that. I don't know if that helped, but definitely for me, so far has been truly wonderful experience. So I truly felt very comfortable in every, like in New York and Texas and China and here, Atlanta. So yeah, so I don't know if that helps. So thank you very much for sharing. So yeah.
I have just one more comment. that I wanted to make to you, Talisha. Like you, I grew up in the only Black girl in my class all the way through my master's program. That was it. And now I'm living in this community where I think that there may be one other Black family that lives down the street. So it is a struggle to, how can I say that? This has been a long struggle for me because of age. But you kind of settle in. You're not afraid as a Baha'i to walk into a Baha'i convention or whatever that may not have other Blacks, but you're there. And I think you can stay there because you are comfortable. And I think a lot of it has to do with comfort. You know, my husband grew up the same way, except he grew up on the West Coast and me on the East Coast. But he was always the only one too. But he's kept a lot of his friendships through the years. They've been out to visit us, you know, and whatnot. And so I think it gets back to the question that you posed for patience. What is patience? How long must we be patient? As long as it takes is the answer. As long as it takes. And you just keep hanging in there and praying, get the ancestors, the concourse on high, O thou incomparable God, Lord of the kingdom. We're the servants. We are like a force of nature when we allow the Holy Spirit to work through us. And the biggest thing that I've had to be patient about was my own personal fear. I had so many fears, and fear can keep you from being the temple of God, because that's what we are. We are the temple of God. But we don't feel that way when we're scared to death to go into a meeting or anything and promote the faith. We cannot be afraid. And well, take that back. We can be afraid, but we have to do it anyway.
All right. I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up here. And I'm going to take my privilege of being the MC to thank you one more time for sharing with us your thoughts and being brave enough to challenge us, which is, I think, a wonderful thing and something that we all need to do. And I wish we could keep talking more. I think everyone's got probably more thoughts, but we do need to wrap up. So let me get a few announcements out of the way here. Today's program has been recorded and posted to the YouTube channel entitled South DeKalb Baha'i Unity Center, where you can view it and invite others to view it as well. For members of the Baha'i Faith, you are warmly encouraged to make a financial contribution to the South DeKalb Baha'i Fund, the Sandy Springs Baha'i Fund, and the National Baha'i Fund through the online contribution system at ocs.baha'i.us, or to mail a check to the Baha'i Unity Center at 2370 Wesley Chapel Road, Decatur, Georgia, 30035. We want to give many thanks to everyone who's worked together to make today's program a success. Our speaker for her wonderful presentation, our volunteer readers, Barbara Hennix, who keeps this whole thing going, the spiritual assemblies of the Baha'is of South DeKalb and Sandy Springs, and of course, thanks to everyone who is here for coming and sharing your morning with us. So I'm Stephen Boyanton. Until next time, stay safe and well. And we're going to now end with a closing prayer for the departed.
Such as
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Alawapa.
Thank you. Aloha.
Love, thank you.
Aloha.
Thank you.